We'll call the meeting to order. All of our members are here, so we have a quorum. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's see. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes of the last meeting? Are there any recommendations or changes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move the minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Announcements. Scott, would you bring us up to date?
Sure. Thank you, Mike. Yesterday, the town council met. We had a few items of business. We adopted, at Susan Frederick's recommendation, the 2021 International Building Code with a couple of modifications. The 2021 Building Code would require sprinklers and impact-rated windows. The town has an exception that does not require residential sprinklers or impact-rated windows, although I would personally encourage you to use both. We voted to rezone the town-owned property on 26, formerly the Walcheck property, to the Moore zoning district. We received a really sizable donation of, I think, approximately $12,000 from Focus Multisports for the 4th of July parade efforts, which is really great and certainly appreciated. And notably, yesterday was the last hearing for both Faith Denault, who served with us here on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and Bruce Fry, who served on the town council for more than a decade.
And we'd like to acknowledge, on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Commission, those two and one of the soon-to-be former council members.
More than a decade? Less than a decade? Around a decade, sure. Listen, I color pictures for a living. I don't do math.
You sure? Thank you, Bruce. We appreciate your work. Okay, Susan, any action on the non-residential design?
Nope, we did not have a meeting. We will have one coming up for an addition to a commercial building.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That may be the first one that I've seen since I've been on that commission. And
But we did rope walk.
oh, that's right. That's the other one. Well,
That's the
sure,
other
so
one.
may-
You have to figure that.
Do any of the commissioners have any comments they'd like to make? Okay, moving along. Is there anybody from the audience, the public, that would like to make comment on anything? If you'll go up to the podium, you have to, your name and your address, please.
Good morning. My name is Kristen Harding, and we reside at 602 Delaware Court in Bethany West. And we came to talk with the commission today about our construction project, including a driveway. We signed a contract in 2021.
Okay,
So-
I tell you what, when we get to that.
Oh,
if you're
okay.
gonna-
Have never been to one of these, so I don't know.
Thank you. New business. First portion of new business is discuss and review proposed alternate options to pervious ground cover requirements for paved areas within a residential development provided by McCormick and Taylor Engineers. We have Catherine Ellis on the Zoom. Welcome, Catherine, and she's going to give us a little overview.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, Catherine. First of all, thank you for taking time off your vacation or whatever to be here. We have been working on stormwater management issues for quite some time here on the commission with the eye towards proposals to go to the town council. And they have focused on pervious materials, to replace impervious or hard surfaces and so forth. As we have educated ourselves about this, at least to me, it became clear that just a requirement for impervious surfaces, that we needed to look at alternatives. And as I think we're going to hear, at least in one case. And so I wanted to just say thank you, Catherine, for being here, because this engineering firm has been very helpful to Bethany Beach, particularly from work that they did in South Carolina, in Beaufort County, South Carolina, on stormwater management in the Low Countries and so forth. And through the materials that they provided us with, one of the things that I hope we can talk about are options other than just replacing what's there with pervious materials and so forth. And so, Catherine, we've gotten
Good
up.
morning. I'm sorry. I'm having just a little bit of trouble hearing everything that you're saying. So,
But yeah, Catherine, our vice chair just went through a very nice, he applauded you, and thank you. If you, yeah, I know you would like to go and do whatever you're going to do other than talk to us. So with that, if you want to give us an overview of your recommendations or opinions?
Go ahead and start with the presentation, give an overview of what.
okay. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Thank you all for having me this morning. Coming from a coastal community too, I know how important stormwater is in our areas and trying to be responsible with future development strategies. Previously, I had worked for the National Estuarine Research Reserves. They're a subcomponent of NOAA, and they're paired with different, I think we're up to 30 reserves across the country. In South Carolina, we have two, one near Charleston's called Case Basin, and one near Georgetown and Myrtle Beach area is the North Inlet Union Bay. And in 2013, they got grant funding to write a low-impact development manual for coastal South Carolina. With that, we included a suite of strategies for managing stormwater on-site and trying to manage the natural hydrologic cycle as close as possible post-development as it was pre-development. Some of the recommendations that we had were planning related, weren't structural, things like, trying to set aside area for conservation, protecting wetlands and forested areas, and some of them did involve structural BMPs. My understanding is that you all are looking for the alternatives to gravel, pavement, pervious pavements on single lot development and redevelopment. Some things that we had discussed at McCormick Taylor were including things like partial pervious, so doing strips along where the tires would be running, and then in between, strips of like concrete or something more sturdy, and then in between trying to minimize that impervious area as much as possible using things like vegetation or other gravel, things along that nature. Another technique you can use is called sheet flow disconnection. So trying to get things from rooftops and driveways to go into grassed areas or treed areas, places that will absorb that small volume of stormwater runoff. Another option would be to include underground infiltration pipes. So basically, you take your impervious area, collect the water from it, and direct it into a pipe that's perforated underground and allow the water to infiltrate that way. So usually it's buried under topsoil, surrounded by gravel, and you need to check the area for the infiltration rate of the soil. But you should be able to, connect like a small swale or a yard inlet or something along those lines to get the water managed on site that way. I'm a big fan of bioretention, rain gardens, things like that, because I'm a gardener. So I love being able to, I did this at my house directing low water to flow into low-lying areas in my yard, and then just planting vegetation there that can tolerate that regime of either dry conditions or really wet conditions. There's some beautiful, beautiful native plants that support local biodiversity and insect populations and pollinators and monarchs, all kinds of great information out there available from the National Wildlife Federation for plants you can use. Your state's Native Plant Society has guidance. Actually, nearby, New Jersey has a really great manual for what native plants to plant in what zones for rain gardens in your climatic region. The goal for this would be to try to capture about 1 inch of runoff from those impervious surfaces. And then finally, something unique that we incorporated recently, 2020, the 2 southernmost coastal counties in South Carolina, Beaufort County and Jasper County, formed a regional stormwater ordinance and stormwater design manual. Very similar, it was composed of some of the same team that put together the coastal South Carolina LID manual in 2014. But more updated and includes tree planting and tree preservation. So you get more credit for on-site stormwater management for protecting existing trees. And so smaller ones get about 5 cubic feet of stormwater retention on site credit. Larger ones that are protected would get about 30. And then you still get credit for planting, going back and planting trees. It's just because it'll take them a while to reach that mature height, you won't get as much stormwater volume retention credits for that. But I've provided the guidance from those documents, passed on to your town administrators. I hope that they had passed those documents along to you. If not, I can email you all if I get contact information. I also wanted to bring your attention to, it's a really unique thing that Beaufort County is doing. They provide stormwater utility fee credits for homeowners who manage their stormwater on site. There's a spreadsheet that they use. Let me see if I can share my screen for you. Oh, no, I can't. I'll send the link. Basically, homeowners go online to Beaufort County, and there's a worksheet that they fill in the total amount of impervious areas on their home site. So the rooftop and driveway, things like that. And that will calculate based off of their storm size. And they use a 95th percentile storm, which is 1.95 inches here in South Carolina. But you guys can change your recommendations to whatever you think would be appropriate for Bethany Beach. Anyway, so it calculates that based on their soil type, how much of the lot or how much runoff is produced during that storm event, and how much the homeowner needs to manage, either through the use of irrigation, rainwater harvesting, or things like the bioretention. And so if they can show by working through the worksheet that they have managed everything on site, they get a waiver for their stormwater utility fee. So it's pretty simple. I think it's spreadsheet based, so it's something that we could easily adapt and create for Bethany Beach as well, for both, I guess, new development, redevelopment, or current homeowners to see, what kind of stormwater they have on their site, and then how much they would, what level of treatment would be required to handle that on site. So that's just kind of a really brief overview. But again, the key takeaway points are pervious driveways and pavement are great. They're not your only option. There are lots of ways to try to encourage that infiltration and natural hydrologic cycle on site. I am a big fan of using as much of your natural environment as possible. So using things like the disconnect, the bioretention, and tree planting, I think are incredible and give the added benefit of aesthetics to the homeowner or the property owner.
Oh, thank you. We're open for questions from the commissioners.
No.
If you have individual questions for her, I'll bring the laptop over and you can speak. No, stay where you are. I'll bring it to you.
Catherine, thank you for that explanation. One of the other handouts that we got was, it's entitled Stormwater Retention Worksheet for Single-Family Lot.
Yes.
And it talks about the total impervious area to be created, and then it has formulas for how you figure out what the runoff is and so forth. For our purposes, I think most of the situation, not all, but many of the situations that we face are someone is either doing a reconstruction or a new construction, and they might want to put in a concrete driveway. And so I'm trying to figure out how best to use your worksheet for the homeowners or the construction company to figure out what size drainage you need to put on either side of a driveway if it's crowned at the top, to keep that water, retain that water and not have it overflow. Am I using the right forms to do that?
Yes. This is an example. I did not create it. It was done through Beaufort County, South Carolina. Another one of the our clients that we work with here in South Carolina. So the steps would be to kind of revamp this to be tailored to Bethany Beach. So first we would need to decide how much water on that impervious area, and are we limiting it to just the driveway, or are we going to include additional impervious areas like roofs? And then from that, you calculate the volume of water. So if it's 1 inch over 1,000 square feet, get that volume that way. And then based on the soils that are in that area, are they sandy or are they clayey, we'll be able to figure out how much volume, how much area, say it's a grass swale or bioretention, how much volume needs to be stored in those areas.
If we have projects that are underway that need assistance in calculating this, can they work through our town inspector to help with that if they don't understand what the, because I still don't myself have a good handle on.
I don't know what you have. I'm trying to figure out. Oh, okay, I didn't.
Is the town inspector someone who normally works on the stormwater side of things? I have not met your inspector yet, but that is something that we, McCormick Taylor, could help support them, get them trained, and help them develop the step-by-step procedure on how to calculate that.
Oh, you didn't get it?
No.
Let's just calculate. Essentially, it's a calculation to
Right.
how you do it, so. But, okay.
Catherine, thank you for answering my questions. We have a number of projects that were contracted for as we were going through this, and we're trying to move them along. And so I'm trying to find a way to have a line of communication so that those projects through our building inspector can come to final conclusion and get their jobs done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, other questions? Scott?
Hey, Catherine. Thank you for all your work on this. My question, I think, actually piggybacks on John's question a little bit, which is, we have a capable, talented, smart building inspector who's also a licensed architect. I mean, she certainly can understand the stormwater calculation, but she's also a one-man band. So in addition to plan review, she also has to do all of the inspections. We get a lot of those plan reviews and inspections. I think part of our thought when we developed the pending ordinance, which was that it's a pretty straight line from, you just write down that all your paving is pervious, and it's very easy for her to see that that's being done and has been done, and it doesn't make the permit application or the inspection overly burdensome. So in your experience, are there ways to make this as streamlined and painless as possible so that a homeowner can understand it, and can prepare it easily, that a developer can do the same thing, and that our inspector can review it as quickly as is reasonable, and not take weeks to confirm that it's actually been done. So is there a balance there that helps make this simply achievable?
I think in Beaufort County's experience, the spreadsheet tool has been incredibly easy for them to communicate to the public and then be able to evaluate on their end, because it's very cut and dry. They have very tight parameters on it as far as what's acceptable, what's not, and it's simplified so that this is the amount of area that we're looking at. This is the volume you have to treat. You either did it through X, Y, or Z, and you met it, or you didn't. So that should be, I would hope, be very streamlined for your inspector. With that in mind, if the simplicity is most important, maybe something like an underground infiltration pipe would not be as simplistic, but yeah, it's something we could work with her to develop, like what would be quick and easy for her to take a look at and expedite those reviews.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
We in addition to this on-site credit that Beaufort County does just for residential homes, they also require the design community to use a more robust calculator tool. It's called the compliance calculator, to demonstrate that on larger developments that they are retaining 1.95 inches overall through a whole other suite of stormwater ponds and pervious pavement, 10 or 11 other opportunities. So the design community knows that they have to use it, but again, it's a simplified tool. The county really likes it because, again, it says, this is my condition, this is the volume I have to meet, I've done X, Y, and Z to meet it, did I meet it, yes or no?
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think that I'm also conscious of the fact that we're talking about an alternate path, right? So if it takes a little more time for you to prepare it, that's your choice as the applicant. But I also know that Susan will receive lots of angry phone calls if permit reviews go from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, and it's something that we did here at the commission. I don't think we're all going to want to hear about that on the back end of that either. So, however, we can keep it as simple as possible, but still achieve the goals that we're going for. Because I support all of the things that you're saying. The goals that we would, the end result would be, potentially greener, more beautiful, and certainly more sustainable in terms of water management.
And I will say, Beaufort County in particular, from grassroots, the constituents have been very vocal and have said, we want this. We want stricter stormwater requirements. And so it's a matter of them, they put the pressure on their elected officials to make this happen. And then from the top down, that has become the norm for them within their planning and engineering departments. I would say what has helped them unify around, it's, what is our goal? So in Beaufort County, it's water quality. They, the sheer amount of development that they've had has forced the closure of numerous shellfish harvesting beds, and the public will not stand for that. So they have been trying for the past 15 years to rectify that situation, and I think having that same unified vision and goal is really important. So I would ask, what is Bethany Beach's goal for this? Can we justify it, and do our constituents want it?
Thank you.
Any other questions? Susan, do you have any questions? No?
No, I have not personally seen the the checkoff list that John had, and I don't know what the spreadsheet looks like, so I don't know how simple it would be.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. Yeah.
Well, I think from our standpoint, with the small lots we have and calculations, I'm not quite sure we have to be that extensive, maybe in what we do, but that's going to be up to the commission to make a determination on that. Are there any questions before we let Catherine go, because I don't want her to have to listen to this for the whole morning? Anybody from the audience have a question about this? It's mainly technical aspects of it. Okay. And nobody. Catherine, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We won't put you through the rest of this. So thank you.
Thank y'all. Have a great weekend.
Okay, we heard from Catherine. We've been looking at this for a while. And we have a bunch of experts up here, architects and building inspectors that can really be our lead group. I would like to, and I'll echo what John said, I'd like to resolve this ASAP, because some people are just waiting on us to be able to do something, and we have to be responsive. So with that in mind, if you will, I'd like to just open the discussion. First of all, either Susan or one of our architects could lead us off and lead us in the right direction. Susan? What are your thoughts, and what do you think? Not necessarily about what you just received, but
Yeah, basically, Terry and I, Terry's not here, have been kicking it around in the office daily. And I don't really have a firm idea, other than we know that the ordinance that we proposed was tabled, meaning it's not something to their liking 100%. We need to rationalize it in a different way. But I mean, there's so many ideas here, I don't know how to put them all together into one cohesive package to put forth.
what would you say, and this is just a general question, the biggest problem that we're looking at? Is it driveways? Is it roof drainage?
Well, I think that it's a problem in several different ways. It's a problem because east of Route 1, we have very narrow, smaller lots, and there is a trend, because they're second homes, for people to pave everything and to cover everything. They don't want to have a whole lot of maintenance. We also put into effect an ordinance requiring all of these large homes to have more parking spaces on the lots. These are things that are creating more coverage, more runoff, and that's probably basic. I mean, Tingle's addition is at Evans Avenue, Tingle, all the 600 number blocks of 3rd, 4th, 5th, all those. They're always going to flood. There's no way they're right on the salt pond. They have a very high water table. They will always have flooding back in there, and they're not they don't cover as much as you see on the areas east of town. Bethany West and all of that, there isn't a great big problem there. We just don't have the flooding there as we do here. It's also higher ground. So I don't have any other way of approaching it other than telling them they can't cover as much as they want to. They have to have some natural area, and they should use a more pervious materials or systems.
Susan, I have one question for Susan. Do the higher grounds, with their runoff, does that inhibit, does that go to the 4th, 5th, and 5th Street? Does that eventually get to them too? Or is it just the salt pond that comes in that way?
I think they're lower, and I think they're below. They're all in flood zones. They're lower, and they're smaller lots, and 40% coverage on them. Doesn't leave a whole lot of space.
Yeah. So the higher ground doesn't really contribute to.
Oh no,
Okay,
I don't
that
believe
was
so.
my question. Okay, thank you.
Scott?
Yeah. So I think everyone has in front of them a one-page sheet that says options to having all paved areas as pervious ground cover. I honestly don't know who developed this page, whether it was Catherine from McCormick and Taylor.
Yeah.
Okay. Just in comparing that page to this 4 or 5 page stormwater worksheet, it seems very simple and easy to understand. And maybe there are some parts we want to adopt of it or parts that we want to strike from it. But very simply, if the issue at hand is that I think we'll hear from some people that want to have a concrete driveway, but that currently cannot have a concrete driveway. There are options for that right in this one-page sheet. For instance, in that case, you might say, number 2, the sheet flow disconnect, which Catherine mentioned briefly, which is if you had say a 10-foot wide driveway, that would need to sheet flow into 10 feet of pervious landscaped area. That could be easily shown on a site plan, an architectural site plan, or a landscape site plan, be clearly read and understood by our building inspector, and then checked to see that it was done on site before receiving a certificate of occupancy or closeout of your inspection. This, to me, seems like a clearer path towards something that we could adopt quickly. Like this worksheet is developed for Beaufort County, South Carolina. It's not going to be exactly analogous to us. There's also some things in here that you guys heard my math skills 20 minutes ago that I don't quite understand as looking at that. And I think from this one page, maybe the one that's most complex, or the 2 that are most complex, are underground infiltration pipe. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of storage capacity underground here within a couple feet of sea level. I'm not sure that there's any underground capacity. And then tree planting and tree preservation, which ties into something that we're really actively pursuing, but does get a little more complex in terms of like how you calculate how much each individual tree is going for. So if I were to just propose something that would get us from point A where we are now, or point B where we are now, to something that could actually be written as an ordinance, I might suggest that we look to adopt in whole or in part items 1, 2, and 4 on this worksheet. So that would be partial pervious paving, which is 50% of paved areas to be pervious. I'm going to paraphrase some of this here. That may be concrete, asphalt, and that 50% of your driveway would be impervious, and the impervious areas must drain laterally to the 50% pervious areas. So one example of that would be impervious paved wheel paths, so concrete, brick, whatever, that sheet flows laterally to an open graded gravel or pervious paver. Number 2 would be sheet flow disconnect, which I just described, which is if you have 10 feet of driveway, it must sheet flow onto a minimum of 10 feet of pervious landscaped area. Could sheet flow in multiple directions or a single direction. And then number 4, bioretention. As Catherine pointed out, she's a big fan of rain gardens, so am I. Bioretention flow from impervious paved areas may be collected and directed towards a bioretention/rain garden area of sufficient volume to capture and filter runoff from a 1-inch storm event. Design of this stormwater bioretention shall be per DNREC/DELDAT guidance. Manuals for stormwater design, there's a link to that. That, again, might require a little more homework, but it could be pretty easily demonstrated and understood. And if we're really trying to simplify from point A to point whatever we're getting to, you could even say, for now, we're not going to handle number 4. We're just going to do 1 and 2.
Thank you. Mark?
The only thing I think sort of specific to the tree planting, which we have been working on, is what I've seen in other jurisdictions, potentially where you get a credit to, double the amount to the extent your site can accommodate them, might offset, say, the initial pervious percentage by 10% or 15 or something like that. Again, I think to Scott's point, we need to look into a little bit more the capacity of what our typical lots can handle, or what the right approach is. But I think tying this back to the comprehensive plan work we're finalizing, the work we've been talking about with regards to trees and protecting trees, that might be an option here to roll that into the calculation option or the trade-off specific to the amount of pervious, since the trees are capturing and also storing rainwater runoff.
Just to piggyback on that too, I don't want to dismiss all of the other work that we have in front of us. I think it's all valuable, and I think it's stuff that we should consider we should continue to consider as we move forward. There's 2 approaches. One is to do the full-on holistic, let's get everything, let's develop a worksheet that's specific to Bethany Beach, and but that's an involved process. And I understand that what we're looking for at the moment is a stopgap measure, and it seems like we may have one kind of right in front of us now.
I think, if I may, I think the comment that Susan made is we have part of the town that's never going to have relief, and we got part of the town that really doesn't have a problem. And we aren't, we're 1 square mile, so I don't think we, at least in my opinion at this point, we need to reinvent the wheel and cover all bases. The only comment I would add to what has just been made is, I think when I go through the town, and I've been here 30-some years, the areas where we don't really have a big flooding problem, where it's going to flood the post or whatever. The biggest flooding problem I see is in the town's right-of-way. People will bring their driveways, be it concrete or pavers or whatever they're using, impervious, and then it floods all around that area because, let's face it, we have a crown on our roads, so we're going down that way, and people bring a concrete pad into our right-of-way, which, if you look at what our codes are, and correct me when I'm wrong, not if I'm wrong, but when I'm wrong, that those pads, say concrete pads, are in our right-of-way. They're not temporary, which I think they're supposed to be. You can't consider a concrete pad temporary. We got to dig it out when we're doing something. And when we do roads, we do that. But if we had gravel or some paver type thing, then one, it saves the town money from the standpoint of redoing it, because the town ends up paying for it anyway, out of the goodness of our tax dollars. And the secondly is, if it's pervious, it tends to mitigate somewhat the flooding in our right-of-way in the streets. So I would like to see, if we do this, that be considered, that if you're in our right-of-way, you better have pervious material, be it, gravel or whatever you want to use, grass if necessary, so that at least the town is mitigating what it can as opposed to everybody else. But, you put in so it's sort of a twofold position I have. If you put in a paver system, and it's gonna look real nice, but then you put it 10 foot into the town's right of way, or 15, that's gonna cost a lot of money when the town goes back and does the streets or comes up. Nobody's supposed to be in those right of ways but the town, except,
Yeah,
so it's something that I think this is a good time to take care of it, and there's a reason to take care of it, so.
the town does allow people to have their driveways continue to the edge of the road.
Right.
It does, right through the right of way.
Right. So I think the town sort of, if anybody has to do something, and we've done it on our own roads, we're trying to mitigate any problems, we probably should carry that to our right-of-ways throughout the town. Future right-of-ways. If somebody wants to build, somebody has it already, nothing we can do. But if we want to catch it, this is a good time to put it in play. And I think, economically, I think it's good for the town. And from the standpoint of, as I just said, economics, but it's also good for mitigation of flooding that I've seen in those areas. You'll see the stuff pond. As soon as you're off either concrete driveway or the pavers, it's ponded next to those driveways. So, any questions? Other? John?
Mr. Chairman, I'm trying to figure out how we get off top dead center here. We have a proposal that on pervious materials that is tabled. If we were, and I'm just now speaking out loud, how do we get to where that we make changes to that and get that off the table so that Susan can do her job and things can move forward? So I'm not sure who I'm asking this question of, but if we were to take what is currently tabled and recommend that we add option 1 and 2 to that, along with anything else, like pervious material to the right of way.
Town's right away.
Would that, and sent that to the town council, would that be sufficient for them to then act?
I think it would, but I'll ask Susan. We don't have the attorney here, but we do have a lot of council people.
I have a question. Scott brought up the point, too, that we need to have, this worksheet probably done. Now, what we are doing today, would this be temporarily until we go through to provide a worksheet? Or is this going to be?
Well, I'm not sure we're even going to vote on the worksheet.
No, I don't think we can now, but
No,
I mean, in the future.
I think if we ignore the worksheet, and Scott, correct me if, again, when I'm wrong of what you said, if we ignore the worksheet, then if something in the future comes up where we think we need the worksheet, which my personal opinion is that, that's
Overkill.
it's overkill. Thank you. That's a good.
Yeah,
on
I
what
think-
we need.
I think if you looked at the goal of the worksheet would be for a homeowner or a developer to determine an amount of impervious area that they could put on their property based on a sliding scale of a whole bunch of other elements. The pending ordinance that we have right now already prescribes how much pervious area you can use in addition to your buildable footprint. I think that's pretty well established. So what we would be trying to do right now is to, I think, layer on an alternate approach, which is you could increase the amount of pervious area that you use if you follow, these things. There may be some wording that we need to go back and look at with the way that the pending ordinance is written, so that we don't cause any confusion or overlap. But I do think that we could essentially layer on options 1 and 2, and I would also, maybe counter to what I said a minute ago, encourage us to consider option 4, the bioretention, simply because on a 40-foot wide lot, which we do have on the east side of the highway, if you had 20 feet of driveway, which you're probably going to be required to have based on how many parking spots you're going to need for the size of your house, you're going to get pretty limited in how much space you can actually use to control sheet flow. So your alternate approach in that case may be, well, we have a rain garden that needs to be calculated, and that puts the burden on the homeowner a little bit, but that's an alternate approach. They could otherwise just use 100% pervious paving and not have to worry about it.
That's an easy way
Yeah.
for all of us, not only the architects, but Susan would, I'm sure, appreciate something like that. John?
So, Mr. Chairman, if I'm a property owner and right now, I have an impervious driveway. And as part of the change to my lot, I want to take up that macadam and just put concrete down. I'm not adding impervious area to it because it's already there. How do we handle that situation?
Well, it's sort of akin to what we do with reconstruction of a house.
Yeah.
If it's 50% or more, it's a new house.
Under the pending ordinance as written, if it's 50% or more of the cost, it has to be
In other
replaced with
Yeah.
pervious
So the
paving.
answer is, you can't go from macadam to concrete.
100% you can't go.
Well, if you're gonna replace it,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you're gonna replace
Right.
45% of it
Okay.
with concrete, then,
Right. So if we were to add option 1 or 2 to what we're proposing, if I had that situation, I could come in and say, look, I've got a macadam, but I want to get rid of that, and I want to put cement down, but and it's going to be 10 feet wide. I have 10 feet of lawn there. That takes care of this requirement. Now, can I get on with my project? I'm trying to bring it down to the real world kind of situation and try to help some people here. Is that, I think that I'm correct in that. Susan, would you see that?
She's reading.
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Right now, if I were to come to you with the macadam driveway, and I want to put a concrete driveway under the tabled requirement, at least half of that new driveway would have to be pervious material.
No,
No?
that's not what the
Okay.
pending ordinance says.
Okay.
The pending ordinance says that all ground cover has to be permeable, pervious. It's either a pervious material
Right.
or a permeable system, and you're only allowed to cover 45% of your lot
Right.
with this permeable material. If you disturb your driveway by more than 50%, if you take up half of it, plus 1 more percent, it has to be done all permeable.
Right. If we were to add as options 1 and 2, I read that to say that if you have the appropriate amount of lawn, that I could put in a cement driveway to replace the macadam.
That's what it says, yeah.
Okay, that's what I was,
John, what you brought up hits on something for me, which is that I think that we should be clear that this would be an alternate approach to driveways and not to all
Right.
pervious surfaces. So required driveways or something, so that it's so that it doesn't supersede that whole 45% issue that we were just talking about. So this could be, rather than options to having all paved areas as pervious ground cover, options to having required driveways and parking areas as pervious ground cover. Because and again, it still would be, the simplest thing to do would to be just to put in pervious paving. It would require the least amount of calculation and paperwork on behalf of the applicant. But there would be an alternate path here, and I think, John, in your scenario, the applicant it would be on the applicant to submit enough paperwork or drawings or whatever to the building inspector for her approval, so that you're not just going to walk in and be like, trust me, it's flowing to this,
Right.
it's not flowing to the street, it's flowing to my my pervious area. You have to demonstrate that with some kind of support in your application, I would think.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Kathy.
what is the concern we have again with number 4, the rain garden?
Kathy, I was just noting that that's a slightly more complex in terms of like how you design the garden area of sufficient volume to capture and filter runoff from a 1-inch storm event. That might require a civil engineer or a landscape architect or somebody with that to do. But again, that could be simply drawn, signed, and sealed, and handed to the building inspector. That would put the onus on the applicant to prepare that stuff. But
Right. It gets a little, to me, dicey when you start to look at landscaping, because if they put it in, it may not remain that way, and we don't go out and inspect that, or they may sell the house and this person doesn't like it, and they take it out and, I don't know, put a rock garden in or something without thinking, because there's no inspection schedule for that type of work.
that is what happened to the rain garden when we sold our house. It's now
Then-
now a graveled area with some chairs in it. I'm sure they love it.
I think it's a problem, but not a huge problem, what we're talking about here. And again, I'll go back to what Susan, you said, it's gonna flood here, it's not gonna flood there. Is a general consensus is we're trying to let the rainwater sink into the ground. I mean, that's what we're talking about, and not create a ponding situation anywhere. I mean, that's, if I cut it down to simple, that's, I think, what we're trying to do.
I think what you really want to do is you want to prevent runoff from going directly into the inland bays and the water system. So, I mean, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we got an advisory that people shouldn't swim because of, whatever's running off from Rehoboth. That has more to do with like wastewater treatment, but these things are all tied in together. So we, in the town of Bethany, I think, should be stewards of the water quality around the town of Bethany, and this is what that's about as much as anything. It is about the sort of nuisance flooding that you're seeing, like where you see standing water at the ends of driveways. That's sort of more of an aesthetic issue or a maintenance issue over the long term. That water is not actually sheet flowing directly into the bay. It's sitting there. It doesn't look pretty, and maybe mosquitoes are getting in it or growing in it. What do mosquitoes do? Developing in it? Sure. But the real thing here is that, so this is not going to solve tidal flooding or even flooding from major storm events. But what it is going to do is prevent that runoff from a typical rainstorm. Catherine said a 1-inch storm was sort of their design standard, from a 1-inch rainstorm from flowing directly into the loop canal and therefore the back bays and damaging water quality and eventually into the ocean. So it's also, as we've discussed, when you just talk about the character and the quality of the town, but prior to this pending ordinance, a homeowner could pave 100% of their lot, and I don't think anyone thinks that's matches the aesthetic quality that Bethany Beach is looking for. So there's sort of parallel tracks here.
Okay, my question on that is the original ordinance that we were going to do. This 1 and 2 and 4 will be part of that now?
Well, not 4.
Not 4, just 1 and 2. Okay, 1 and 2 will be part of that. And it will still prohibit the complete concrete of a lot? That's what we were trying to get to before, right? That you could not cover your entire lot.
Well,
Well, that's not what these say.
Okay.
These don't have a limit to how much of your lot you can pave. Well, it would work out that way in 2, because you'd have to have equal amount of open space, landscaping or grass or something.
Right.
But in 1, it doesn't. It just says half of your paved area is pervious, but you can still then you could do concrete half and then put pavers on the other half, and that's not going to perk the whole thing.
So we have to say how much can be paved to begin with.
I would put that, in my opinion, I would put that in there because it then guarantees every lot will have some landscaped natural area.
that's why, and maybe there's some wording that we can come up with, which is that this alternative approach is intended for the 20 feet of allowable driveway width
Yeah,
or
we could
something
put
like that.
allowable.
I know that's just about how wide the driveway is, where you cross your property line, and from there it can get wider. It could also be tied to minimum number of parking spots that are required. So there's this, as a refresher, there's a sliding scale based on number of bedrooms and required parking. We could say, like, if your home is required to have 5 parking spots because you have 6 bedrooms or whatever that math works out to be, the parking areas for that, and no more than that, can be
I just want to be
impervious
careful
if
there wasn't a loophole that somebody could pave their entire
Yeah.
surroundings around their house.
Without demanding a percentage of the lot to remain natural grass or something, that can happen. And by that, they'll come back with that, what's that, AstroTurf stuff and say, well, there, it's green, and it's not really.
That's actually, Susan, you just mentioned that. It's an even cleaner way to do it, is to just say, there's a minimum percentage of your open area must remain naturally vegetated,
Grass or planted or
Right.
something. And that also would work better into how a tree ordinance would come about, because you'd have to then add that into where your natural areas could be, how much, then they wouldn't be using, well, they're 7 feet down the side of my house, that's it.
They count that, yeah.
Yeah.
Any
So-
other comments?
So maybe we just need to determine what that minimum percentage is.
Minimal percent.
So if that's option 1 and the partial pervious, just playing this out, of one of these suggestions, what does that reduction in pervious trade off to be on site? And, right, like, we're already requiring X percentage, or would be requiring X percentage of naturally vegetated area. Does that have to double? Like, what's?
I'm not sure I understand it. What
Well,
you're-
if you offer up that 50% can be pervious and the other 50% impervious,
That
what
means-
is the
that means
benefit?
there is no-
What else are we then requiring on the rest of the property to counter this option?
Because right
Because
now,
option 1 is saying pervious, maximum 45% coverage, or whatever that coverage is, and X percent remains vegetated. If you go to the alternate path of 2, you're saying half of that amount can be impervious.
Well,
We're already requiring a percentage of naturally vegetated, which would receive the sort of disconnect
guess-
requirement. So
Susan?
like, you have to make it fair in that the second option requires something in exchange for.
Something more than the pending ordinance
Right.
currently requires.
Like with the bulk density, if we were going to only do the, if
Oh,
you want to expand the house, the top
yeah,
could
no
only
more
be one,
charts.
one half. Do you know what I mean? And that, I think that's what you're
what I
taking.
think,
It's a trade-off.
what I think it's getting mixed up here is, you should have, in my opinion, you should have a percentage that we should do these as 3 options under mandatory percentages. So if you started the ordinance with, you're only allowed 45% ground coverage on your lot, and then you have 3 options on how to do that, that would ensure that you have some area of natural area. So it would have to be added to, the ordinance would have to be reworked to maintain some sort of percentage. And I don't know that 45 is the right one or not. It just seemed like a good one somehow. But I don't know.
Yeah.
But so that you had a percentage, you had a baseline, and then under that you would put your options for how to handle the rest of it.
Right. And so that if 45% was the minimum naturally vegetated space, if you took one of these alternate approaches, you might be required to have 55% or 65% or something like that at that point. I think that's what Mark is saying, is that they're,
Well, that's what I was trying to get away from, is not to have them, not to ever have that percentage change. You're going to only allow so much percentage of ground covering, period. And then you'd have option A, it all is pervious. Option B, 50% is pervious, 50% isn't. Of that 45%, option
I was
C
flipping
would
it.
be, the sheet thing where you'd have the difference, but you can't cover the whole lot.
I got you. You were thinking about the impermeable space, and I was thinking about the permeable space going up, not down. But I like your approach better.
My thought is along the same lines as what Susan's saying more clearly, but I still think as we work through these options, if you give the option to only do half pervious, which is more costly, and half impervious, something in that option needs to be amped up to be a similar solution or benefit as a full pervious option.
True, yeah.
Yeah, so we need to figure out what that trade-off is to make them equal while still maintaining the same total coverage requirement.
You have a suggestion on that?
I mean, I think it's going to probably have to come through the landscaping solution, possibly, but again, we're working with small parcels, and or maybe it's just 50% is not the right percentage in this example. Maybe it's 70-30 or something, and an extra tree, or I don't know,
Yeah.
something of that that provides that benefit or trade-off.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're back at 9 o'clock, I think. But, are there any, let me just ask, are there any questions from the audience or statements? And if you'd like to come up now, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, because they record it, but, we have your name and address, so
So,
you
hi.
just go into yelling at us or whatever.
Again, it's Kristen Harding, and I live at 602 Delaware Court. I think everything I said, I don't even know where to begin after hearing all of the conversation, but I will start with, I can appreciate all the discussion that we're having, because, when we purchased our house, we had water problems in our property. And we worked with the town, and we had a swell dug in the front of our house. And we spent a lot of money putting in multiple drains to move the water to the swell. We also have taken the downspouts and we've buried them to a pipe underground to move the water to the front. So we've been trying to do, everything that we can to deal with the water problem. I don't have the one pager, so I would like that, because I'm not really sure what 1 and 2 are exactly at this point. But on our property, we have a nice front yard. We're not a house that's, got a very small footprint, and people are, like you said, paving the whole property. So I'm not sure if the example that you gave, where if you do a concrete driveway, I think John was talking about it, if the rest of your yard is 3 times, 4 times the size of that driveway, is that fall into one of the options that you're talking about? Okay. So where I was starting before is we're on a 1-year journey now into this project for our house. And we've moved back in because we couldn't afford to continue to not live there anymore. But not having the driveway done presents problems. So I guess, where we want to get is, how do we get to a decision, at least, for things that are in flight or in progress? Because, without finishing our driveway, our front step onto our porch is exceedingly high. It's dangerous for my parents when they come. We can't really do our grading and seeding because they will all get, destroyed when we do the driveway. We have a dumpster in front of our house, and our neighbors aren't really happy with that. They also said they got approval to repave our street, and if we don't get the dumpster moved, that might get delayed another year, depending on the timing of when the paving happens. So, we really want to move forward, and so we're not sure if there's an opportunity to get, an exception, given it sounds like we fit into one of these 1 or 2, so that we can move forward with our project, or if, you can commit to a date when the decision will be made, because we have these kind of other issues that we have to deal with along with that.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Because what was being done on your property?
So we did a whole home renovation.
Okay.
And as part of that, we are regrading the yard to continue to deal with the water problems. We want to grade the yard towards the drains that we've put in. And we're replacing the driveway and putting a walkway to the back of our house. And we put in a shed.
Okay. When was all this permitted before?
Yeah, so in our original contract, what was permitted was to redo our asphalt driveway. And so when the builder went, a couple months into our project, we worked with our builder and decided we'd rather do concrete than asphalt.
Oh, okay.
And, he said, no problem, there's a cost difference. We said, okay, but we never redid a new contract. So when he went to do the driveway, what he was told was, you can proceed with the asphalt, but you can't do concrete because this ordinance is still pending. And we were like, well, they're both impervious, so what's the difference, like if we did concrete or asphalt?
I'd have to look into that. I'm not recalling that one, but I'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I think you had talked to Ralph, is our builder, and then my husband, I think you talked to him on the phone as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not ringing a bell.
So that was kind of, an initial request was, if we're doing like for like, impervious to impervious, why wouldn't we be able to just proceed, because we're not changing or doing anything different? And we did want to offer, up a concession that, we would build a trench along the driveway, and we would, instead of having the driveway graded towards the street, have it more graded to the side, so that when the water runs off, it can go into the trench that's filled with stone that also goes to our swell. So we think that probably more than a pervious material, which when you get heavy water, it's going to hit the driveway and it's still going to run into the street. So, so we thought that was even a better alternative than, putting in a pervious concrete driveway. So that's where we're at.
Anybody have a question or a statement?
Well, I think, as Susan mentioned, she'll look into it. I would say that we kind of knew somebody would get caught up in the wash of this. It sounds like you're caught up in the wash, so I apologize for that. I guess relief from the building inspector's decision would have to come from the Board of Adjustments, not from the Planning and Zoning Commission, if that's what we needed to do, I think.
Well, I don't know what to do. The Board of Adjustment determines
Like
dimensional.
variances, yeah.
And this is just sort of an oddity. It's a
Right.
pending ordinance. I don't have a lot of leeway with it. We grandfathered everything that was permitted prior to, and that might be, I don't remember what Mr. Timmons brought to me or asked me, but like I said, I'll
Yeah.
look into it. But we're stuck with what we had going on before. I don't have any leeway. I can't just grant things.
Yeah.
Be fun, but they don't let me do that. So,
But
yeah, we need to,
yeah. I mean, I guess if like,
we've had probably about a dozen pending work and concerns, and all of them are related to driveways, every single one.
I think, though, what might be unique in our case is that we had already had in our contract to do the asphalt driveway. So, I think others that might have they're just deciding to change their driveway, and I think they're being told, well, we can't get a permit for that now because of the pending ordinance. We did this contract way before this ordinance was even being considered. And the only difference is that we had made a decision and didn't redo the contract to change it from asphalt to concrete. So that's really what we're just trying to change the material, not to put in something new or take a bigger footprint or anything like that, but just a like for like, kind of scenario.
Any other questions? I mean, the one thing we don't want to do is in planning and zoning, we don't want to be holding people up forever because of our inability to finalize this. And I echo what Scott said. I do apologize. You got caught up in the wash. And I think we're going to try to get something done real quick. If Susan's going to, she'll check you out, see if there's.
I'll take a look at that again.
Thank you.
I'll do that Monday.
Thank
it
you,
would,
appreciate
it
that.
would still, even if today we wrote a proposed ordinance, it would still require 2 readings.
Right.
Or at least one reading, yeah. I mean, it's gonna have to be heard at the town council level too.
Yes, Mayor. We know where you live.
Mr. Chairman, while the mayor's coming up, if we have, Susan, just help me understand here. If we have 10, let's say 10 or a dozen projects related to driveways that were, that came under contract before our tabled provision, they're grandfathered, is that correct?
If they have a permit.
If they have a permit. I mean, so can't we just, that's not changing anything. That's the way it is. If you got your permit before this went into place and you wanna do a concrete driveway, you're grandfathered to do that,
Right.
correct? Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Ms. Mayor?
My understanding of the pending ordinance doctrine is that once you submit something to us, because it would have to have a hearing and then a vote on it, but once you submit it to us and we consider it, it takes the place of this pending ordinance. So it sounds to me like you're pretty much along with something more concrete. And I would, excuse me for the,
Okay,
it was unintentional, but.
you must recuse yourself.
But anyway, it sounds to me, if 2 of you could get together and put something in writing for the rest of the Planning and Zoning Commission instead of working it out here, and we're having a meeting September 19th, and it's a reorganization meeting, but we could add that to the agenda, and it would become a pending ordinance. And you might want to have, if you can have another Planning and Zoning Commission meeting in between, just to consider that, that might be a way to go. And I have one more suggestion. You brought it up, Mr. Boswell, and there was a discussion about it as the purpose of the ordinance. And I think it would tie the 2 things together, the suggested alternatives and the permeable surface, if there was a purpose statement somewhere in there. Because I think otherwise people may become confused and say, well, why are you allowing these alternate things if you want everything to be permeable? It's just a suggestion.
Good suggestion, thank
Mr. Chairman, we would be meeting on September the 17th. That's
before yours. Oh, it's too close, okay.
so, right.
We moved the town council hearing from the 16th to the 19th, because actually canceled the 16th to do the 19th. But we could move our meeting to a different date also.
We'd have to have another meeting, I think, in between. How much time do you need? Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Oh.
Please.
So it seems as if we need a percentage that we're talking about for a trade-off. Is that what we're talking about too, as part of this new ordinance?
That could be, you know.
Okay.
Right.
And Mark, do you feel like you would be able to work this out with your architecture background? Because I think we're just throwing around percentages. We really don't know.
Look, I'm happy to take a stab at the options, outlining those options, but I think we probably still need to come together to
Yeah,
to
no, we
work
still
that
need
through.
to come together, but we need
you
to
know,
know a
if
percentage.
if we're having another interim meeting or another meeting, happy to have something prepared to react to.
Okay.
I think having that initial language that was proposed in front of us, so we're all referencing that or working off of that as well. But yes, happy to take a pass at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So then we need another meeting.
meeting is the 16th, right?
Yes, sir.
Meeting is the 16th.
Yes, please.
Is there anything on the upcoming agenda in terms of,
Public hearings or anything?
yep, there are, Andrea? So we already have one advertised, and so we have to meet on the 17th.
Right.
Right.
So we would be talking about another meeting in
Yes, second
in between.
meeting, yeah. Yes, sir. Your name and address.
Tim Naughton with Evergreen Homes, 33176 Coastal Highway. I would, and I've heard everything you said, I would really encourage you to come up with, like Susan said, one percentage for each lot that you see as an acceptable pervious or impervious coverage. I think there's a lot of good ideas bouncing around, but it's becoming very, very complicated. And we can make this very, very simple, and we can do it in a way that doesn't cause Susan any more work. And that is to come up with one percentage that you will allow to be covered. And then when we turn in a site plan for the house permit, we do the calculation for Susan and tell her what is being covered and what that percentage is. And that's stamped by an engineer. And then Susan can look at that site plan as part of the process. The work is done for her, and then she can approve it or disapprove it. We're not talking about 3, 4, 5 pages, different calculations, different credits. I would discourage all of that. I would discourage, I hate to say this, but I would discourage credits for trees. It just gets too complicated. I would just pick a number. And when you think about this number, you've got to think about a number of things. You're talking the dwelling, which is the majority of the coverage. And when we come up with a percentage, it should be built from the bottom up, not pushed from the top down. So a typical lot could be, let's say, 50 by 100. Well, you have setbacks, and the house can only be so many feet, and you can build that house on the property first. And so from your 5,000 square foot lot, let's say your house takes 1,800 square foot. Okay, well, we're clicking that number down. But there's other things that technically make a lot impervious. So you could have the porch, the landing, the lead walk, the compressors for the air conditioning typically too, a patio, a shed. What happens if they want to put in a pool? That's impervious. So you have to take all these different things that a homeowner could want, because you're balancing our need to control stormwater with their use and enjoyment of the property. And so build a site plan for a typical house in the township with what somebody would typically want, and then you will fall right into your percentage. And I wouldn't give credits for pervious driveways. I just say, here's your number, and here's a menu of what you can put on your lot. Pick and choose what's important to you, and come up with this number. And it's so simple, because again, that number is on the site plan when it is turned in. Susan verifies it, and then she inspects it before U&O. It's a simple process. It's a process that other municipalities use, and there's no reason to make this very complicated. Obviously, I'd buck for a higher percentage than 45, but that's because I'm considering a lot of other things in addition to the house footprint to get there. So again, you can't have everything. You know, some people want to come in and do everything I said, plus add a hot tub. Well, that's impervious. So you can't have all that. Pick and choose what you want, pick and choose what's important to you, and calculate that percentage before your permit, and then there's never any discussion about it. Because as a builder, I'm constantly asked, what's my percentage? What do I have left? I want to do this after you finish my house. Well, we can say, listen, your percentage is exactly, 47.3%. So you have 16 feet left. And they're like, yeah, but I want to do a hot tub. Well, that's going to be a small hot tub. You can't do it, So that is a proven system to make it easy, and easy on Susan and easy on the town. And you put the burden back on the homeowner to pick and choose what they want to create a system that works. And you can immediately take, nobody can do, from now on, can do 100% coverage lot. You can immediately take that down to 60 or 55 immediately and see the benefits right away. And we're not justifying calculations or justifying credits. Just make it simple, stupid. And it helps the builder, it helps the homeowner, it helps the town.
That's simple. John?
Sir, do you care to opine as to what that percentage from your vantage point should be?
I want to go high, a little higher than probably, but I would build it from this is what I did. I sat down and I did a 50 by 100 lot, and I drew a 30 by 60 box, which is my dwelling. And then I drew a patio and a lead walk. And then for me, the biggest thing that eats up pervious area that adds to pervious area is a driveway. So I'd immediately take my driveway down to strips like we talked about, or some type of strip and stone combination. But then you have to add in your AC units. What about an outdoor shower? It could be, impervious. So I add that in. Everybody wants that. And then there's one other thing we have to talk about is a deck. If a deck is an open deck with slats, is that pervious or impervious? That's what we have to decide. So I would just sit down and do my calculation, and I can't tell you, because when I do it for a customer, and it depends on what's important to them. So if they want a pool, I got to get rid of everything and put my impervious into the pool. So the dwelling is the easy part. The hard part is the accessories around the dwelling, which make it impervious. And it doesn't matter. The total calculation is all that's important. There's different methods to achieve pervious area. I personally do not like bioswales at all.
I'm sorry, don't like?
I personally do not like bioswales at all. Sorry, Scott, but I hate them because, especially on the east side, if you create a bioswale that's 12 or 18 inches deep, there's lots at high tide that could fill up with water. And what's a bioswale? Everybody lets them go. All homeowners hate them. You see them, they collect balls and basketballs and toys, and nobody maintains them. Nobody wants them. And when I say nobody, architects and engineers love them. Builders hate them. Homeowners hate them.
Butterflies like them.
Butterflies like them. But they're just horrible in my opinion. That's my personal opinion. That's not my personal opinion. That's my experience.
I just want to mention, we kind of do what you're saying right now. We limit structures, anything greater than 12 inches off the ground, which is your sheds, your house, your outside shower, to 40% of lot coverage. That's done. That's the maximum you can do. And in the pending ordinance, we also added a percentage of impermeable that was put in there to account for pools, more than anything. Because we're looking now, if you've got everything over 12 inches as a structure, that's 40%. What we're doing now is looking at everything that's on the ground. And that's where they came up with the 45%, or we came up with 45%, to account for driveways, patios, walks, and all the other stuff that a person would want to put on the lot. So it is kind of the direction that we're going. It's just we're stuck on making all pervious or permeable or not, and allowing for some landscape area.
And just noting that while I appreciate the simplicity, the steps from getting where we are today to where Mr. Naughton was suggesting are more complex, because right now the zoning code doesn't count pools that are less than 24 inches above grade as part of coverage. There's all these other sections that we'd have to go back through to just, the bulk density chart. We'd have to completely change that to get to that. So I think what we want to do is take that notion and apply it simply to this, so that it is as simple a process as you described, that it's a calculation that you can demonstrate to your clients, that homeowners can understand, that can be quickly and easily reviewed. So it would be in addition to whatever your bulk density sliding scale got you to for your home coverage. Then there would be some additional allowance for
I
impermeable,
think
which
we're covered on structure. It's in there as there's a max. Bulk density helps define the homes that are closer together, like in the R1 districts. And I'm not, we have no problem with that. That's just where we are with it. It counts everything that's visible above ground, 12 inches or more. It counts as a structure. Decks count, it's now everything else, the patios, the astroturfy grass, the pools, yes, all the rest of it is what we're trying to figure out how to manage the water runoff.
But not to dismiss at all what Mr. Naughton was saying, because I think there's a value to telling a client, like, if you want a pool, you got to have a pervious driveway. And that's, I think, exactly what we're going for here, is that notion that, like, it's very clear. You can have one or the other, but not everything.
Well, it would be simple for you, Susan. I mean, just a number.
It would be difficult to get from where we are today to just a number. That's because you'd have to.
We'd be referencing.
We'd be talking about a more significant change that we're talking about at the moment.
I think that's pretty much how I believe the city of Rehoboth does it. With if you want a pool, you can't have this big a house, etc. And they bundle it all a little differently. That allows for that.
And nobody likes Rehoboth's permit process.
No, they
I don't
don't.
think.
Have we made a mountain out of a molehill?
I mean, I think.
It's a process.
I think where we are, just to recap, is that everyone but me hates bioretention. It's just no. Just to recap,
I like them too.
Kathy's with me. But just to recap, I think what we're talking about is options 1 and 2, partial pervious driveways and sheet flow disconnect, and a trade-off on the percentage of naturally vegetated space that would be required if you took one of those two approaches. With those two things in mind, we could add those to our pending ordinance. I think maybe some notation that they're specifically related to driveways or whatever, and that it seems like from where we are right now to an intermediate Planning and Zoning Commission hearing to discuss just this prior to the reorganization meeting on September 19th, that we could pretty quickly and simply draft something for council's review, which would make it a pending ordinance beginning on September 19th, were it accepted by the town council, which would solve some of the issues that we've heard here today and would get us on the path towards turning this mountain back into a molehill.
Anybody agree?
Sure.
That's fine. There are 2 Saturdays at the beginning of September, if everybody wanted to meet again on a Saturday. There's the 3rd and the 10th.
You know, Election Day was going to be the 10th, Saturday the 10th. At least some of us were going to be here as judges. I propose the 10th, I would propose the 10th of September as an additional meeting of the commission to talk about this particular thing.
Just trying to think of my calendar.
Well, if it's a Saturday, it's either that or Labor Day weekend.
Yeah.
It is Labor Day. It's before that, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's the weekend before.
It's the weekend before.
I mean, those are the 2 days, 2 Saturdays.
If we do it on the weekend, yeah.
If we do it on a weekend.
It will be interrupting my granddaughter's visit, but that's okay.
No.
Well,
From
mine too,
Hawaii.
I think.
No. When is her visit? We will not interrupt.
Yeah, when is it?
I'll just bring her along.
Yeah, she probably made more sense than we did. You know,
I'd say we'd keep it short, but there's 3 architects up here, so it's good. There's no short meeting with 3 architects.
Well, the 10th, and that'll give everybody enough time, and give the council enough time, and then you could add it to your agenda. And and I think the bottom line is we will sit here until we approve something. So, so that may be an impetus for us to approve something quickly.
Yeah.
So it'd be the 10th. Do I have a motion?
Move supplemental meeting for 10 September 2022 to discuss alternative options to pervious ground cover requirements.
Any discussion? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
So we will have a meeting on the 10th.
At 9 o'clock as usual.
9 o'clock.
Yeah.
9 o'clock.
I'm sorry, 9 o'clock. Very good, thank you, and hopefully we won't be delaying everybody too much longer. We'll take a 5-minute break, I think, before we go into the last item. John?
I want to thank you all for coming out.
Yeah.
And be sure to get with Susan about when your contract was signed and all to see if it's grandfathered or not. And if not, we're doing the best we can to move it ahead. So,
Yeah, thank you for coming, I appreciate it. Thanks for listening to all this stuff. So. Okay, we're gonna take a 5-minute break, a real
okay.
5-minute break, and get back to the last item.
I think he's the president.
Yeah,
No, I'd vote.
yes. We're back in session. Next item of business is a brief, quote-unquote, brief update from the Comprehensive Plan Subcommittee. I don't know who's doing the briefing. Mark?
I'll take the first pass. So the subcommittee met on August 4th with the IPA team to review chapters 1, 2, and 3. These chapters arrived for our review just about an hour or two before that meeting. So we actually worked through the proposed modifications to those chapters, as well as all of the new updated graphs and contents throughout sort of live. It was a bit of a struggle. We took away sort of a review period to collect the subcommittee's feedback and compile it. That resulted in a meeting, a kind of reconvening meeting on next Tuesday, to review all of that feedback, to then forward it back to the IPA team for incorporation. And then at the same time, we'll get the next few chapters for review and continue pushing it forward in that respect. So chapters 1, 2, and 3 are background, the community character, and the community profile portions. So a lot of the information, in particular in chapter 3, has all been all the overhauled graphs, charts, data from census, and things that we had flagged in the document to be updated has been updated at this point. Most of, I think, the discussion is coming around background and community character, is what we need to focus on for Tuesday's meeting, and the return comments back to BJ and team.
Great.
Good.
John?
I would only add, Mr. Chairman, that at our meeting on Tuesday, I will ask the UD assistants if they were the same ones that worked on, like, the Ocean View comprehensive plan. I don't know if they did. But the notion of making sure that they're putting it in chapters that are readable.
Good.
And I think that's the goal, but because of the off mic discussion we had, I will raise that point with him as part of this. I think we're making progress. He does not necessarily have as full an understanding of the town and its ethos, if you will, that we do because we live here, but he's been very amenable to suggested changes and so forth. So we're making progress.
Good. So, yeah, as long as, yeah, I know I've heard Ocean View's plan's great and all that. Our plans in the past have been well received by the state. They seem not to have any problem, and Lou can speak to that for the most part. So I guess from the chair, I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel with the review, but we need to have the T's crossed, the I's dotted, and all the charts and graphs up to date, which we do not have and can't do, I think. And I think we hopefully, as you said, we're running through it in the proper sense. Are any of these chapters, they're not ready to look at by anybody at all? You know, like they either, you know, sort of drop off with either the council or the planning commission?
I think after the feedback from this upcoming Tuesday meeting goes back, they'll update the first pass, and I would imagine at that time we'd be able to.
Yeah, could you
it
guys
makes
send that
sense
out?
to
And I
share
think
it,
the
yeah.
council would like to look
Yeah.
at it so that we don't get into another delay. So that'd be great.
We're not quite there yet, because there are some changes that need to be made, but I think, yes, sir, we can meet your request.
Yeah, and that will give the council essentially more time to review it, as opposed to seeing the whole thing dumped on them at once. And so So I think that's good. It's, again, it's just for internal at this point, so.
Right. Okay.
Good. That it? Any other any questions or anything? No? Oh, okay. That's the end of new business. Now let's go on to old business. An update on the proposed tree preservation code amendments?
Yep. So I held back on sharing this out because of some of the additional supplement and the discussions today, and to not maybe further confuse all of us in the process, but did work through closing out some of the items from July with Susan in particular, the definitions for improved and unimproved for incorporation. There were a few other items that collectively we didn't need to progress or adjust. And then just working through right now, finalizing the Chapter 2 amendments for trees in particular for the group to review. So I think this other information that was shared was also helpful in seeing how maybe complex some of it can get, but we are keeping it simple just in terms of using that calculation of site area, and perhaps we hold on that until we get through what these percentages are for the pervious definition, and then use the remaining area that would be landscape to make a fair recommendation for how much planting area there is.
Thank you, Mark. That's very good.
I think that I would anticipate the current September meeting, we could go over that as, after
Okay.
we make decisions on the 10th.
Yep, and we will definitely, at the next meeting,
Yep.
send something
Okay,
forward.
good.
We have no choice.
And I could circulate that ahead of the meeting, so
Oh,
you
great.
can look at that.
I'd appreciate that. Any other comments, questions from anybody? Okay. We made before 11 o'clock. I used to like to do 1 hour, but ever since Lou quit sitting up here, I get complicated. So I appreciate everybody sitting around for this. Any statements or anything?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you for the flexibility that we had today by having the input from this, from the engineer and so forth. It was sort of a different commission meeting than typically, but there was also 2 residents that are frustrated and had an opportunity to explain their point, and I think we've moved something along, and so I really appreciate the fact that it was a different kind of meeting and it was a longer meeting, but responsive to pressures that I know I was getting and maybe others from grandfathered people.
The only thing I'll say is, once we finish that and the trees, could be boring, I don't know. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good, we're adjourned.
Great.
Good work,
I think that's what he goes, yeah.